quiet now. Adjust your blankets and let the weight of the day drift away. You are currently lying on a planet that is being physically deformed by a ghost. High above your roof, through the clouds and the deep velvet of the night, sits a 73 quintillion-ton rock. It has no wind, it has no life, but it has a grip. Every 12 hours, that silver sphere reaches down from the blackness of space and tries to kidnap the Pacific Ocean. It drags 300 million trillion gallons of salt water across the face of the earth in total silence. Most people look at the shore and see waves. I want you to look at the shore and see a giant liquid muscle. Every 12 hours, that muscle flexes. It is the largest movement of mass in the known universe, and it is happening right now while you breathe. Welcome back to the observatory. I am the sleepy professor. Tonight, we aren't just watching the tides, we are watching the moon try to steal the sea. Picture a beach at dawn. The sky is barely blushing, a soft bruise of purple and gold. The wind is a mere whisper against the dunes. And there, at the edge of the world, the waves are slowly creeping up the sand. They're stretching, reaching, like they're waking up after a long night. It feels peaceful. It feels rhythmic, almost like the earth is breathing in and out. This is the tide. It is quiet, it is constant, and it is ancient. But beneath this calm ritual is a story of immense invisible forces, a planetary choreography that has been performed for 4 billion years without a single missed step. Before we dive into the deep physics of this dance, I'd love it if you gave this video a little like. It helps our quiet corner of the internet reach more fellow wanderers. And if you're feeling extra chatty before the snooze kicks in, let me know in the comments where in the world you are watching from tonight. To understand why the sea moves, we have to stop thinking of the earth as a solid, unmoving rock. Instead, imagine the earth as a giant water balloon wrapped in a very thin, crackling layer of land. Now, picture the moon, silvery, steady, and quietly determined. It is pulling on that balloon with its gravity. It isn't a violent, dramatic yank. It's a subtle, continuous tug. The moon's gravity pulls the ocean toward it, creating a bulge of water on the side of the earth facing the sky. That is our first high tide. But the universe has a secret. There is a second bulge on the exact opposite side of the planet, a place where the moon can't even see the water. How can a pull in one direction create a bulge in the other? That is where the science gets truly beautiful. Now, let's talk about that second bulge, the one on the far side of the Earth, where the moon shouldn't have any reach. At first glance, it feels like the universe is cheating. How can a pull in one direction create a mountain of water in the opposite direction? This is the differential force, and it's one of the most elegant tricks in physics. You see, the moon isn't just pulling on the water, it's pulling on the entire Earth. Imagine you're holding a giant, soft water balloon. The moon's gravity pulls the water on the near side the hardest because it's closest. It pulls the solid center of the Earth, the rocky core and the mountains, a little less hard, and it pulls the water on the far side the least of all. In a very real, very strange way, the moon pulls the Earth out from under the ocean on the far side. The planet moves toward the moon, but the water on the back stays behind, lagging like a sleepy cat refusing to leave its bed. The result is two mountains of water. We are being stretched into a liquid oval. One bulge faces the moon, and the other faces the stars. You aren't just living on a sphere, you are living on a world that is being elongated by an invisible ghost. But the moon isn't the only player in this dark, silent theater. There is a much larger, much older god in the room, the sun. The sun is 27 million times more massive than our moon. By all rights, it should be the absolute master of our tides. It should be able to flick the moon away like a speck of dust. But space is vast, and the sun is a long, long way away, 93 million miles of vacuum and light. Its grip is powerful, but because it is so far, its gradient is blunt. The moon's grip is sharp. Even so, the sun still demands a say in how our oceans move. It contributes about 40% of the tidal force we feel. Most of the time, the sun and the moon are pulling in different directions, their forces messy and uncoordinated. But twice a month, the clockwork of the solar system aligns. They decide to stop fighting and start working together. During the new moon and the full moon, the Earth, moon, and sun fall into a perfect straight line. Astronomers call this syzygy, a word that sounds like a whisper. In this alignment, the gravitational poles of the two giants stack on top of each other like layers of heavy, wet velvet. This is the spring tide. The name has nothing to do with the season. It comes from the old word springen, meaning to leap, and the water truly does leap. During a spring tide, the high tides are higher than they've been all month, and the low tides retreat further than you'd ever believe. The ocean becomes a predator. It reaches into the streets of Venice. It floods the marshes of the lowlands. It is the moon and sun joining hands to show the earth exactly who is in charge of the water. Can you feel the weight of it? Trillions of tons of seawater surging upward in a synchronized cosmic heartbeat. But the moon is a restless dancer. About 7 days after the surge of the spring tide, it moves to a new position. It reaches a 90-degree angle from the sun, forming a cosmic L with the Earth at the corner. Now the two giants are at war. The sun is pulling the water one way, the moon is pulling it the other. They are fighting over the same trillions of tons of sea, and in their struggle, they partially cancel each other out. This is the neap tide. The ocean becomes quiet. The high tides are lower than usual. The low tides refuse to fully retreat. It is a hushed, indecisive stalemate. If the spring tide is a shout, the neap tide is a tired sigh. The waves feel heavy, lazy, caught in a gravitational tug-of-war where no one is winning. It is the only time the sea truly feels like it's taking a nap. Take a breath with the ocean. Feel that stillness. The universe is in balance, however briefly. Now, I want to tell you a secret that usually stays hidden in the archives of astrophysics. Every time a tide crashes against a jagged cliff in Scotland or drags sand across the floor of the Pacific, it steals a tiny bit of energy from the Earth. We call this tidal friction. Think of the tides as a giant, invisible brake pad rubbing against the spinning wheel of our planet. Every single day, for 4 billion years, the moon has been tapping the brakes. Because of this friction, the Earth is spinning slower. It is a physical fact. Our days are getting longer. In the time of the dinosaurs, a day was only 23 hours long. If you go back far enough, to the very beginning, the Earth was a blur of light and shadow, spinning so fast a day lasted only 6 hours. The sun would rise and set before you could even finish a long walk. But the moon has spent eons calming us down, trading our speed for its own journey. But there is a price for this peace. Physics demands a trade. As the Earth slows down and loses its rotational energy, the moon gains it. The moon uses that stolen energy to push itself further away from us. It is a slow, multi-billion-year goodbye. Every year, the moon drifts about 1.5 inches further into the dark. It is literally paying for its escape with the seconds of our lives. Every night you sleep is a fraction of a millisecond longer than the night before. The universe is giving you more time to rest, but it's taking the moon away to pay for it. Somewhere far in the future, the moon will be so distant it looks like a tiny star. The tides will become a memory. But for now, it's still here, still pulling, still keeping us company in the dark. We are lucky to live in the age of the great tides. If the Earth were a perfectly smooth, polished billiard ball covered in a uniform layer of water, the tides would be simple. They would be a boring, predictable clock. 2 highs, 2 lows, every day, exactly the same height. But our planet is anything but smooth. It is a lumpy, bumpy, tectonically restless masterpiece. It is spotted with continents that act like giant stone walls, blocking the path of the water. Think of the tides not as waves, but as a single planet-sized bulge of water trying to travel around the world at hundreds of miles per hour. As that bulge hits the coast of Africa, or the jagged islands of Indonesia, it doesn't just pass through, it reflects, it bends, it gets squeezed into narrow channels. The water is forced to improvise. This is why a person standing on a beach in Tahiti might see a tide of only a few inches, while a person in the Bay of Fundy sees the ocean rise 50 feet into the air. The land is the architect of the sea's ambition. Geography is a powerful thing. Take a look at a map of a narrow bay or river mouth. When the moon pulls the massive weight of the Atlantic Ocean toward a coastline, all that energy has to go somewhere. In places like the English Channel or the Bay of Fundy, the land forms a natural funnel. The wide mouth of the ocean is forced into a tiny, narrowing throat of land. The water has nowhere to go but up. It piles on top of itself, climbing higher and higher until the landscape is transformed. Conversely, look at the Mediterranean Sea. It is almost entirely enclosed by land, connected to the great Atlantic only by the tiny, narrow needle eye of the Strait of Gibraltar. Because the opening is so small, the moon can't shove enough water through the gap in time to create a massive tide. The Mediterranean is like a cup of water with a lid on it. It barely ripples. It stays still, hushed and ancient, while the great oceans outside are screaming toward the shore. But here is the most surreal fact of all. In the middle of the great oceans, there are places where the tide simply doesn't exist. Scientists call these amphidromic points. Imagine a large, flat tray of water. If you tilt it back and forth, the water sloshes at the edges, but in the very center, there is a point that stays perfectly still. The water just rotates around it. There are several of these nodes in our oceans. If you were to sail your boat to one of these coordinates and drop an anchor, you could stay there for 1,000 years and never see the sea level change by more than an inch. The entire ocean is spinning around these silent centers like a giant liquid record player. While the coasts are crashing and surging, these points are the ultimate sanctuary of stillness. They are the eyes of the gravitational storm. Take a moment to imagine yourself there, floating in the absolute center of the Pacific, where the moon's pull is perfectly balanced by the spin of the Earth. Total silence, total stability. Most of us think of the tide as something that happens where the water meets the air. We see the waves lick the sand, and we think that is the ocean moving. But the ocean is a three-dimensional cathedral, miles deep, and filled with layers of different temperatures and saltiness. Deep in the abyss, where the light of the sun is a forgotten myth, there are internal tides. Imagine waves that are 300 feet tall, taller than the statues of our greatest cities, moving silently through the dark. These waves don't move on the surface, they move between the layers of the deep ocean. When the moon's pull drags the heavy, cold water of the abyss over giant underwater mountain ranges, it creates a massive, slow-motion surge. These internal waves never break on a beach. They break against the deep-sea canyons, stirring the nutrients of the dead and bringing life-giving minerals back up to the heights. Even in the crushing dark, miles below your feet, the moon is still the invisible spoon stirring the world's largest soup. And here is the truth that will make your bed feel a little less solid tonight. The moon is so relentless, so hungry for its grip, that it doesn't just pull on the water, it pulls on the solid crust of the earth. As you lie there now, tucked under your blankets, the ground beneath your house is rising and falling. We call this the earth tide. Every single day, the rocky surface of our planet bulges toward the moon by nearly a foot. You don't feel it because everything around you, your street, your trees, your neighbor's roof, is rising and falling in perfect unison. You are floating on a rocky sea that is constantly expanding and contracting. The Earth isn't a static stone, it's a living, breathing lung. We are all rising toward the stars and sinking back down twice a day in a silent, stony prayer. Life, of course, has been paying attention. For billions of years, the creatures of this planet have synced their very survival to the moon's schedule. There are species of crabs that only spawn during the highest spring tides, knowing the water will carry their offspring far into the safety of the mangroves. There are coral reefs that release their eggs in a single synchronized explosion of life, triggered by the specific moonlight of a turning tide. Even we humans, made mostly of salt water ourselves, feel the pull. Our history is written in the tides. Ancient fishermen in China and Mesopotamia didn't use watches, they used the moon. Medieval monks timed their prayers to the retreating sea. Entire civilizations have risen and fallen based on whether they could predict when the ocean would return. We are children of the tides. Our blood, our rhythm, and our very sense of time were forged in the slosh and pull of a lunar world. Take a deep breath. Feel the rhythm of your own heart. It is just another tide, rising and falling in the dark. If you were to take a simple fiddler crab and move it hundreds of miles away from the ocean into a dark, windowless room, something remarkable happens. It doesn't lose its way. Even without the sight of the waves or the smell of the salt, the crab will continue to scuttle and feed exactly when the tide is low back at its home beach. It has an internal lunar clock, a tiny biological gear set to the rhythm of the moon. This isn't just instinct, it is a molecular synchronization. Many scientists believe that the very first stirrings of life, those fragile, single-celled pioneers in the ancient tide pools, were jump-started by this constant sloshing. The tides acted like a giant lung, bringing in fresh chemicals and washing away waste, forcing life to adapt to timing, to cycles. We are not just living on a world with tides, we are the result of them. Once a year, usually after a full moon in late spring or early summer, the Great Barrier Reef partakes in the largest synchronized ritual on the planet. Millions of coral polyps release their tiny eggs and sperm into the water at the exact same moment. To a diver, it looks like an underwater snowstorm, but moving upward. It is a blizzard of life. They wait for the specific moonlight and the specific slackening of the tidal currents. If they released their eggs during a surging spring tide, the offspring would be swept away into the hungry open ocean. If they waited too long, they would settle in the mud. They use the moon as their conductor to find that perfect, fleeting window of calm. It is a symphony played on a scale of thousands of miles, conducted by a rock that sits 238,000 miles away. And what of us? We like to think we are separate from these wild, ancient rhythms. We have our electric lights, our digital watches, and our climate-controlled rooms. But look at our language. The word month comes from moon. The word menstruation shares its root with moon. For most of human history, the lunar cycle was the only calendar we had. Our ancestors looked at the waxing and waning crescent not just as a light, but as a promise. They knew that when the moon reached a certain fullness, the tides would be high, the shellfish would be easy to gather, and the path through the forest would be lit. We carry the moon in our stories, our biology, and our very sense of time. As you drift deeper into sleep, remember that you aren't just an observer of this universe. You are a participant. Your breath, your heartbeat, your very rest, it is all part of the same clockwork that moves the Pacific. But let us widen our lens. Let us leave the salt spray of the earth behind and drift out into the cold, silent theater of the solar system. Because gravity doesn't stop at our atmosphere. Tides are a universal language. Everywhere there is mass, there is a tug. And in some corners of our neighborhood, the tides don't just move water, they melt mountains. Take a look at Jupiter's moon Io. It is a small, pizza-colored world caught in a gravitational nightmare. It is squeezed between the immense gravity of Jupiter on one side and the pull of its sibling moons Europa and Ganymede on the other. This isn't a gentle tug like our moons. It is a violent, rhythmic kneading. Have you ever looked at the rings of Saturn and wondered where they came from? They look like a halo, a crown of ice and dust, perfectly flat and shimmering in the pale sunlight. But to an astronomer, those rings are a crime scene. They are the remains of a moon that wandered too close. Every planet has an invisible boundary called the Roche limit. Think of it as a no trespassing sign written in the language of gravity. If a moon stays outside this limit, the tides are a gentle tug. But if it crosses that line, the planet's tidal force becomes stronger than the moon's own internal gravity. Saturn reached out and pulled on the front of that moon so much harder than the back that the moon simply unraveled. It was shredded into billions of pieces of ice. When you look at Saturn tonight, you aren't looking at a decoration. You are looking at the ultimate power of the tide, a world torn apart by the very force that makes our waves splash so softly against the sand. Have you ever noticed that we only ever see one side of the moon? We talk about the dark side, but it's really just the far side. The moon never turns its back on us. It is locked in an eternal stony stare. This is tidal locking. In the beginning, the moon spun much faster, just like the Earth. But the Earth's gravity created tidal bulges on the moon's solid body, just as the moon does to our oceans. These bulges acted like a physical handle. Over billions of years, the Earth grabbed those handles and slowed the Moon's rotation until it perfectly matched its orbit. Now, the Moon is synchronized. It is tethered to us by a gravitational leash. This is the fate of almost all moons in the universe. They eventually lose their spin and become silent observers, forever facing their masters. It is a hauntingly beautiful kind of loyalty, written in the physics of slowing time. In the deep reaches of the galaxy, there are stars that do this too. Binary stars, two suns orbiting one another in a frantic, fiery dance. When they get close enough, their tidal forces stretch them into egg shapes. They pull material off one another, a bridge of plasma and fire stretching across the vacuum. They are feeding on each other's mass, guided by the same differential force that moves the tide pool in your favorite coastal town. Gravity is the great connector. It doesn't matter if it's a drop of salt water or the heart of a burning sun. Everything responds to the pull. Everything is trying to find its balance in the dark. Take a deep breath and feel that connection. You are made of the same atoms that are being pulled by these distant giants. You are part of the architecture. Let us zoom out even further, beyond our solar system, beyond the stars we can name. Galaxies themselves experience tides. When two galaxies pass near each other, they don't just collide like cars in a crash. They pass through one another like ghosts, but their gravity reaches out and pulls. They develop tidal tails, long glowing streamers of hundreds of billions of stars being dragged out into the intergalactic void. Imagine a galaxy as a vast, swirling ocean of stars. When another galaxy pulls on it, the stars at the edges are the first to feel it. They are pulled away from their homes, forming beautiful, glowing bridges across millions of light years. We see this happening in the mice galaxies and the antennae galaxies. It is the same physics as the beach at dawn, only written on a canvas so large our minds can barely hold the image. The universe is just one big ocean, and gravity is the tide that moves the stars. And then we reach the ultimate tide, the one at the edge of a black hole. If you were to fall toward a black hole, the gravity at your feet would be so much stronger than the gravity at your head that you would be stretched out into a long, thin strand of atoms. Scientists, with a rare sense of humor, call this spaghettification. It is the tidal force taken to its absolute, terrifying extreme. It is the point where tug becomes a tear. It is the moment where space and time themselves break down. But even there, in the most violent place in existence, the principle is the same. It is a difference in pull. It is the universe trying to move things at different speeds. It is the final note in the song that started with a moon and a beach. Even today, we are trying to harness that ancient power. We build tidal turbines, giant underwater windmills that spin as the moon drags the ocean past them. Unlike the wind, which is fickle and moves as it pleases, the tide is a guarantee. It is the most predictable energy source in the universe. We can calculate exactly how much power a bay will produce 1,000 years from today, down to the very second. It is a clean, silent, gravitational engine. As you lie there, think of that energy, a silent, invisible hand turning the gears of our world, lighting our homes and moving the very ground beneath us. It is the ultimate green power, the power of a rock orbiting a sphere, fueled by nothing but the leftover momentum of the Big Bang. But all songs must eventually reach their final note. We know the moon is drifting away, 1.5 inches a year. It doesn't sound like much, but over billions of years, the math becomes a tragedy. Eventually, the moon will be so far away that it can no longer stabilize the Earth's wobble. Our planet will start to tilt wildly, our seasons becoming chaotic, winters that last a century, summers that melt the poles in a week. But before that happens, something else will occur: tidal locking. Just as the moon now only shows us one face, the Earth will eventually slow down so much that it only shows one face to the moon. One side of our world will see the moon forever, hanging motionless in the sky, while the other side will never see it again. The tides will stop moving across the planet. They will simply stay put, two permanent bulges of water, frozen in time, pointing toward a distant, retreating friend. By then, the sun will be growing older, swelling into a red giant. Its own gravity will begin to claw at the Earth-Moon system. The atmosphere of the sun might even reach out and create a gas drag, pulling the moon back toward us in a final, fiery embrace. But we don't need to worry about the end of the world tonight. That is a story for a different eon. Tonight, the moon is exactly where it needs to be. It is the perfect distance to give us total solar eclipses, a coincidence so rare that we might be the only eyes in the galaxy to ever see one. It is the perfect distance to keep our climate steady. It is the perfect distance to sing you to sleep. As we approach the end of our journey, I want you to feel the gravity of your own body. Feel the way your mattress supports you. That is the Earth pulling on you. But remember, the moon is pulling back. In this very moment, you are a tiny bit lighter than you were an hour ago. The moon is overhead, or perhaps it's on the other side of the world, but it is reaching through the floor, through the walls, through the very air, and nudging your atoms. You are being cradled by the same forces that move galaxies. You are floating in a sea of invisible threads. Let go of the tension in your shoulders. Let the tidal force of sleep pull you under. You are safe in the pattern. We have traveled far tonight, haven't we? From the jagged, lightless canyons of the deep sea to the volcanic, agonizing squeeze of Jupiter's moons. We have seen galaxies stretched like taffy and stars dancing in a fiery tidal waltz. But now it is time to come home. Imagine the view from your window fading into a soft lunar blue. The great tides of the Atlantic and the Pacific are still moving somewhere out there in the dark, but they feel like a distant hum now, a background noise to the universe. Within your own room, the air is still. The shadows are long and kind. The gravity that held the stars together is the same gravity that holds you safely in your bed. You are anchored. You are heavy. You are exactly where you are meant to be. If you could listen to the sound of the solar system, it wouldn't be a roar. It would be a slow, rhythmic pulse. The Earth spinning, the moon orbiting, the sun holding them both in a warm, golden grip. It is a clock that never needs winding. It is a promise that never breaks. Think of the water outside. It is rising right now, somewhere in a harbor you've never visited. It is lifting a small wooden boat just an inch higher. It is cooling a rock that was baked by the afternoon sun. It is bringing oxygen to a tiny crab hidden in a pool. It is all so small and yet so cosmically vast. The universe isn't just a place of cold physics. It is a place of care. The moon doesn't have to pull on us, and yet it does, every 12 hours, like clockwork, like a lullaby, repeated softly over and over across the ages. As you drift into the final minutes of our 2-hour voyage, let your thoughts become as fluid as the tide. Don't try to hold on to the facts or the figures. Let the Roche limit and the spring tides dissolve into the dark. You are a child of the sea, even if you live 1,000 miles from the coast. Your body knows the rhythm. Your breath is the ebb and flow. Your sleep is the deep, quiet sanctuary of the neap tide. You are moving with the planet. You are traveling through space at 67,000 miles per hour, tucked safely under a blanket, protected by an atmosphere and a silver moon. You are a traveler, and your journey for today is done. The tide is in. The harbor is still. The moon is watching over the world while you rest. If you've enjoyed this 2-hour descent into the science of sleep, I hope you'll join me again at the observatory. But for now, there are no more stories. There is only the quiet. There is only the dark. There is only peace. I am the Sleepy Professor. Thank you for wandering with me. Stay curious. Stay heavy. Stay sleepy. Good night, sleepy friend. Good night.